Hello. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to LiBri's webinar. In the chat, as you enter, please drop your first name, country, and your role or connection to libraries. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. We want to give everybody time to enter. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to begin our conversation soon. Hi, Agrita. Thank you for joining us from Latvia. We're so happy you're here. Hi, Federico. Thanks for joining us again. The Bibliogenus founder. Nice to have you. Again, as you enter our webinar, please go ahead and drop your first name, your country, and your role or connection to libraries. Hi from Serbia. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We'll be beginning in just a few minutes. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm seeing more and more people jump into our webinar. Thanks for joining. When you come in, please go ahead and write your first name, your country, and your role or connection to libraries in the chat. Hi, Silva from Latvia. Welcome. Hi, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us from Germany, an information specialist at a university medical library. How fascinating. Thank you, Anna, for being here from the University of Cambridge, Libraries and Archives. And welcome from Croatia. We have a diverse group of participants today. Hi, Katarina from Lisbon. Welcome. And hello, Tomas from the Charles University Central Library in Prague. Sounds very beautiful. Hello, Olena from Poland. Welcome. Oh, Ewelina as well. Excellent. And we also have a correspondent or a participant from the Ukraine. Welcome and thank you for being here. We're going to begin in just a minute, so thank you to everyone who has already chimed in the chat by writing their first name, your country, and your role and connection to libraries. Magda, whenever you're ready, we've got a good group, so we could go ahead and go on to the next slide. All right, so hi, Linda. Thank you for joining us. My name is Megan Lee. I'm a librarian and a facilitator with Bibliothèques Sans Frontières in France, but I'm also American by way of Los Angeles, California. We also have with us today a very special guest. We have Magda, who is a grant program designer and project manager at FRSI. She'll be speaking to us today about managing grants and applying for them so that you can fund the projects that you dream to have in your libraries. Oh, thank you so much. So now I would love for those of you who would prefer to have subtitles during today's webinar, here are the steps to turn them on. First of all, in the Teams meeting, click on the More tab, which is on the top of your toolbar, right next to the camera and the mic button. Choose Language and Speech, and then select, please, Show Live Captions, as shown in the screenshot that's included in this slide. Step number 2, the subtitles banner should appear at the bottom of your screen, below the camera views, and on the right-hand corner of that banner, please click on Language Settings. Once you do that, if you go to the next slide, you should see a new pop-up. and that pop-up will say translate to. Please keep English as the set language of the spoken language for today's webinar, because that is the language we'll be speaking in. And you can select the language of your choice for the subtitles. If you have any questions, please go ahead and write it in the chat, and I'll do my best to help. So our agenda for today. First, this brief introduction. Then we're going to go into from challenge to project, choosing a proper call for proposals, and how to plan a successful application, to finally a closing with an evaluation. Our norms of participation are the same as for all of our previous webinars, but for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. The first thing that we request of all of our participants is that they participate with non-judgment, meaning that everyone's ideas are welcome and observed without judgment, so that people feel free to share, to converse, and so that we can learn from each other. Second of all, that requires participation. So we love it, love it, love it when you react. So you can click on the reactions tab, which is at the top of your screen. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. You could also in the chat go ahead and tell us anything you're thinking about, ideas, questions, etc. We really love to hear from you since we're all spread out. We even have today someone joining us from Taiwan, so incredible. But that goes into number 3. So if you want to turn in your camera, that's another way for us to connect with each other, to see each other, but it's not required because this webinar is recorded, and we'll be sharing it with the 50 libraries that are participating in the LiBri project, as well as on social media and with EBLIDA and other library associations. So just keep that in mind. If you are sharing any details about your specific library, please do not share confidential information about your patrons or institution. And finally, number 4, if you are not asking a question or participating, we ask that you turn off your microphone to avoid an echo. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to Magda, who is our expert on grant programs, and I'm so excited that she's here today, joining us from Poland to talk to us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Megan. It's nice to be here as well. I'm so glad and honored that I can share my experience with you. As it was said before, I am the grant program designer and fundraiser. My area of specialization is basically application and the calls for proposals in the grants program. So I'm going to give you some of my insights and share my experiences and probably give you some tips which might be and hopefully they will be relevant for you while designing and planning your application. But first of all, before we dive in, let's get a sense of who is here. Could you please share your experience in writing the applications and getting grants for your projects? Could you please respond in the chat? You can only type. Of course, you can provide some more elaborated sentence, but you can only answer us with the letter A, B, or C, which stands for A, very experienced. That means that you apply and get the funding regularly. B, you're moderate, so you're still learning and exploring. And C, you're at the very beginning of this road and you're really eager to start. Let's see what are the statistics and what is the landscape of our guests and their experiences. I'm scrolling down. So yes, we have, I think, a majority of B and C. So the landscape is rather mixed, and I think we have a lot of beginners. So, and yes, and a few people who have already gained some experience, which is great. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so today's challenge is to get the understanding of how are we going to finance our project. First of all, I would like to encourage you to do some strategizing, right? Because that's why we actually meet today. We are thinking about getting some funding, but let's take a step back. Why somebody, some company, some public body, some ministry, some private foundation would like to give us money. And if they give it to us, what are the rules they will do it by? And then if we already get this funding, how they and how we are sure that we will all stick to our commitment and the settlements. So these questions are actually navigating us to one of the first major keywords in this webinar, which means donors. Donors are institutions acting as fund operators. That means they have some money and they want to distribute this money among the institutions or organizations like ours, libraries, NGOs, sometimes private companies, right? So they have some bigger aim and they would like to get it realized, get it implemented through our activities. So that means they award grants in support of specific objectives or thematic priorities. So coming back to our strategizing and answering the questions I already posed, you have to remember, being experienced or not experienced at all, that donors, these majestic figures in our life, they are allocating funds for grants according to their preferences. That means they have their own mission and vision for their organization, right? They have their values. They have their strategic objectives. They have their theory of change. They know what they want to change. And what do we have to internalize at first is that we need to somehow fit into their logic of the world. We need to fit into their theory of change. We need to fulfill their strategic objectives. This is the very first thing we have to remember. Otherwise, we are going to draft our proposal for the project using only our own priorities, and it's not going to be the, let's say, best match. And of course, we are trying to strive for like match make in heaven. So first thing we need to remember about fitting into the donor's logic, strategy, and values. So then my second question. Uh, of course, donors need to be sure that their money will be properly spent. And of course, it's not about being suspicious. It's not about thinking that all the people who are working extremely hard to change the lives of their communities, they're going to perform any kind of fraud or they are thieves or they'll be stealing money. But still, there is this risk. And the agreements, rules, and regulations are for the bad times, not for the good times. So, for that reason, each single donor is creating something which is called instructions or the rules and regulations or any kind of code of conduct, which contains a lot of different things we actually have to apply to. And of course, it somehow secure the safe position of the money. It's usually written there is no double funding, so one expense could only be covered by one source of funding. We cannot pay our own loans or our organization loans. We have to be very careful and clear while selecting the people we are going to work, right? There is also a risk of some kind of nepotism. And then all of these rules and regulations is going to be written in your agreement, written, right, and signed by the donor and your library NGO. So this is the mutual trust, but of course mutual obligation and commitment, which is being reflected and I'm sorry, and pictured in the agreement. In the agreement, you will also define and describe what are your rules as a project promoter? And that's the second keyword you've got to remember. I don't have it on a separate slide, but it's good to remember that we, as institutions or organizations, um, receiving the money to implement the project, we are called either the project promoter or a grantee. This is probably equal. Megan, you are the native English speaker, so you can react if I'm saying something not not correctly. Okay, so remember that we have the donor and we have the project promoter or a grantee, and we are both going into this reality of project implementation. It's being regulated by the agreement, and then money. Money is usually coming to your bank account according to the agreement, and it usually comes in installments. So also very often the money is not being paid upfront like the full sum. In case of bigger projects and long-term period projects, it's being transferred like in 2 or 3 installments. And usually also the last installment is being paid upon the end of project and upon the approval of the final report. So the third tool to control and to monitor your performance are the financial and merit-based reports. Usually are done in some time periods, quarter a year, half a year. Yearly reports are also very common in case of longer projects. We are reporting our finances, but most of all, what is the most important, we are reporting on our achievements. So we are reporting on our results. It is also possible that our donor will send us some auditors, the external specialists who will be looking into our books, into our papers. They will be willing to meet our target groups, our beneficiaries. So all the people we are going for, these are our beneficiaries. Like all the activities, all the tasks in our project are actually designed to fulfill the needs of our beneficiaries. So the third keyword to remember. So the question actually, why they would like to give us the money, the answer is because we will do their job just better, faster, and in general more efficiently. Why is that so? You can imagine the big building of the ministry, a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of procedure, hierarchy, bureaucracy. Of course, they work hard. I would never question that. But the chain of command is quite long. And then to perform something, to execute something, takes a lot of time. And we are, as librarians, or NGO workers, as educators, we have, what do we have? Let's think about it and write in chat. What do we have as the library, NGO, or other, let's say, smaller than big ministries or big private companies workers? What do we have? What is our advantage in this relation? Do we know that? Megan, maybe some tips? Freedom, says Olena. Yes, to some extent, different perspective. That's also true. What they are seeking, all these ministries, expertise, yes, absolutely, I agree, but still I'm searching for one word, I guess, which is very crucial in understanding why in this context we are much better. Quick decision process, yes. The tip is that the word is starting from O, and then it continues with U. And the third tip is that the third letter is T. No, it's OUT, auditory. Close, close. It's getting warmer. Outreach. Congratulations. Yes, we have the outreach. Ministries don't have the outreach, right? They don't. We are working with people. They are not working with people. They don't work with people. They of course have a lot of statistics, a lot of reports, a lot of expertise inside, but when it comes to the direct contact with people, they don't have it because it's not the specific of their job, right? Okay. So my next question is, how do you feel like, or what do you think about what is the main purpose of the project? Like also metaphorically speaking, why do we decide to start the project? Because we want what? To make a world better place, Silva. Yes, actually, the slide, the picture is the answer itself, because we want to change something. So the next thing you've got to remember is that project is actually the way to address and to respond to the problems, challenges, deficits, and needs. All these words have one thing in common. They have one common feature. They are to some extent negative. Needs are not negative, but if the needs are not fulfilled, that means that there are some deficit areas people are somehow suffering from, right? So all the projects actually are built, and it doesn't matter whether they are like social responsibility project or it's something we are doing in the libraries, or there's like big corporation, they want to change something. They find one area, probably a problematic area, they find a spot or the slot which is not being properly covered by existing services. And it's only the nomenclature which differs. Because what we are trying to do, we are finding the problem. The problem is something which is visible, it's recognizable. We can see that the aftermaths of this problem is going to be quite serious, and then we want to change it. And that's how one of the most important elements in the project methodology is the theory of change, because it's all about the change. So, summing up this short part of our meeting, I'd like to say that if you are thinking about the project, you need to think about the change you would like to make, you would like to evoke. You need to then find the problems, needs, or challenges you should face, and then you should overcome somehow. And then you should think about what needs to happen to reach your goal, to reach the change. So, on this slide, you see a quite simplified process of what we should do in terms of project drafting, in terms of project design. What are the most basic elements and tasks you have to undertake when it comes to the project design, project thinking, design thinking, etc. And I'm going to describe them and explain them to you. So we are actually coming back to the story we used during all the previous webinars. Probably you heard it already, but I'm going to come back to it and give you some a summary since we are going to refer to it during the whole time of today's meeting. So we are zooming into the mid-sized European city which is experiencing rising tensions following the settlement of third country nationals in a local community. Three problems are converging. So what we see in the city, what we are coming across is a lot of hate speech on social media. Discriminatory incidents are happening in public spaces, and all these really affect the newcomers feeling safety, feeling being or not being welcome, etc. So, our newcomers, people who migrated or fled from the other countries, are being felt unwelcome. They don't actually see the acceptance from the local community, while the local community itself, they are somehow passive. They don't want to involve. They see it's going to, it's not really something serious. It's not our concern. Of course, it's good that we are providing these people place for getting settled, but actually, it's not our business. That's what they think. And then what the local authorities say and act, they are actually slow. um, they would like to react, but they don't have the proper tools. They see there are some grassroots efforts, but they are quite anxious and they don't want to support them publicly. So, all in all, we see that our guests, our refugees or migrants, they are left alone. They are struggling. They feel really unwelcome. They are suffering from um, various situations, both on the level of individual cooperation, individual acceptance, but also professional. Uh, all these phenomena you see, they will reinforce each other, so the community will feel less safe, less cohesive, and it will be harder to reach through any single intervention. I'm sorry, but I think somebody has the mic on, and I would like to ask you to mute it because I can hear it and it's kind of affecting my concentration. So I'm
I'll
very
work on
sorry.
that. Sorry
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, no, no worries. I just wanted to tell it this, say it. Okay, so we have a problem, and we also have some actors. They might be in the project logic called stakeholders. So all the institutions, organization, bodies, activists, various groups who are somehow affected and they want to be involved in the action in the project. So in this case, we have three partners with one shared goal. One of them is the public library, providing neutral meeting ground. We say third place, trusted community relationships, communication channels, and venues. We have also active NGO with the main area of expertise in migrant support. And then there is Municipal Integration Office as a part of city administration, which is providing access to policy processes, potential co-financing, and it could give us some institutional legitimacy. So each of the partners brings something to the other, to the whole partnership, the others cannot provide. And this is what funders call added value of partnership. So next word to remember is the added value. So this is actually the additional benefit that a project produces beyond what would happen anyway without the grant funding. So the story is that there are a lot of additional added value in the European project. So my next question is, how do you feel like what would be the EU added value or European added value? When it's actually going to happen, what should be planned in the project to say that the project has the European added value? Thinking, thinking. Mm-hmm. Anybody has the idea? What could be the European added value in terms of partnership? Yes, I would say in a more like an abstract form that European added value appears, or we could talk about the European added value when we have like multi-country partnership, and then there is a project which involves countries from different parts of Europe, north and south, east and west, with different background, different realities. This is one thing. And of course, European added value is when we refer to so-called European values. So, for instance, democracy, as Lydia said, social cohesion, etc. That's actually the European added value. So we have to remember that the added value is the benefit that project brings to life, and it would not exist if it's not for the project. So the challenge. What are the challenge? We already defined and discussed. Of course, I'm discussing, you are listening, but hopefully you'll be discussing it after the webinar. So we've got our problems, and now we are thinking about the challenges we are facing. So this slide actually I would like to draw your attention to the review formulation I have done, comparing to the previous slide describing the problems. This is also the next tip about formulating the most important words for your applications, because of course we can say that our community is facing a lot of hate speech, discriminatory behavior, and then the residents, they remain skeptical, and local authorities, they don't want to get involved that much. We can say that, of course, but then the art of writing the application is the art also of making the proper synthesis. It's the art of making, it's the art of formulate good wording. So, and references to the already existing phenomena. So we are speaking now about safety and belonging. And we are, as you see, we are explaining what do we mean about the issue of safety and belonging in the community. We are talking about community disengagement. We are talking about the institutional gap, right? So what I'm saying that sorry is it's really crucial to formulate the wording the way which enables you to refer to the existing phenomena. Then you can describe the reports, the statistics, the ways other countries or other communities are actually trying to handle these problems by proving it exists, it's valid, and it's serious. Okay, now we are going to the next phase, step 4, which is a response. What I would like to here draw your attention to is that the activity design follow directly from the problem analysis. So, in my opinion, very often, and of course I'm not free of this kind of tendency or these scenes myself, um, people think that the project could be the sum of their brilliant ideas because they are very creative, they are very innovative, they know how to work with people. But what is wrong actually in this kind of approach? You have an idea why it is wrong? That we are putting into the project all our brilliant ideas, and then we are talking to our partners, and the approaches we are testing, we would like to kind of put it into the project and scale it up. Why it is not exactly a good point? What is missing in this type of approach? It's focus. Yes, Silva says it's focus. Perhaps,
It,
yes.
could
Mm-hmm.
it be just kind of respecting what already exists and the know-how the work that's already been done and kind of going from there?
It's always good to instill into the project the solutions, the know-how, as you said, which have been already tested. But what is missing in this approach? There is no real reference to the existing problems. What you see on the slide is the way how the project activities have been designed in a very clear and direct reference to the problem we identified. So, we identified there is a lack of meaningful contact between communities. So there is one community of like the people who are already live there for some time, inhabitants probably of the nationality of the country we are. Um, and then there is another community of newcomers, and there is no contact between them. So we formulated the problem, we identified the problem, and then what we are doing, we are designing the activity with a very direct, with a clear reference to the existing problem. And we are somehow sure that it's going to work. So we are not designing the project because we think we are right, or we think that these approaches we have already tested, they will work again. We have to be really embedded down to the ground in the problems, in the analysis of problems, and then design the project activities as the responses to the problems. Next problem we identified is the negative narratives and misinformation circulating online, right? This is a project, and how we are going to handle it, we are going to provide the literacy training, which builds the capacity to recognize and counter hate speech constructively. Of course, we have to remember and we have to be sure that this activity will actually provide the solution to a problem. It's going to change it. You see that the events which are proposed here, they are actually providing the solution. They are going to change the problem. Yes. And then what we are going to do again, following the same kind of logic, if we feel there is a low sense of shared responsibility among long-term residents, we would like to propose the community dialogues, which are reframing the integration as a collective concern, not a service for newcomers. So speaking in a very simple words, we are going to provide a space for those two communities and bring them together, get them in touch, make them talk to each other. So not separate services for inhabitants and for newcomers. We need to bring people together and make them talk because otherwise it's not gonna work. And then fragmented local response with no coordinating actor. The library-led partnership provides a neutral, trusted space for cross-sector collaboration. So what we are saying that library is a good place to involve the local authority because usually public libraries are anyway financed and supervised by the local authorities, and then libraries usually have multiple partnerships across the community, so they can also bring them together and try to develop joint solutions to the problem. And the next assumptions we are making that, of course, the resources are really important for planning the project. We are saying that we probably have enough resources for 6 months to run the program. Yeah. So this is our very first response we are thinking. And then the next step is to find a proper call for proposals. Once we already knew what we are planning to do, what are our areas of interest, what are basically the resources we have, what is the partnership we'll be applying, what are the local challenges we are facing. So, call for proposals. Next keyword for all those of you who are not experienced in this area is a funder's formal invitation to apply for grants. Usually there is a program, like grant program, where all the strategic objectives and the tools and the list of eligible activities are being described, and a call for proposal is like an announcement that, hi guys, the grants are now being open. You can apply. Usually you apply within some proper form, writing down various answers to the questions, describing your project from very different angles so that it's cohesive, it's concise. So before applying, you must understand and you must analyze what has been written in the regulations. So, what problem is the funder trying to solve? That's what I mentioned already. What are the eligibility criteria? Eligibility, very important keyword, because not all the grant programs are for everybody. So the grant programs, in their rules and regulations, the eligibility criteria is being described, namely who can apply. Sometimes it's only the NGO, sometimes it's the public institutions and the NGO. Sometimes it also involves the private sector. So, and then what is also the subject of eligibility is the amount of money we could apply for and what is actually the time you have to spend the money. So it's called eligibility period, and it says usually that the grants are eligible to be spent within, let's say, April 1st, 2026 till May 30th, 2027. And this is the eligibility period, and it means that we cannot spend a penny once this period is over. This is also very important. The rules and regulations are also defining what are the expected results. So what the donor expects us to do and to achieve, what outputs and outcomes does the funder want to see. There are also scoring criteria, how the applications will be evaluated and tracked. So you have to also remember, or you have to know, you've got to know that usually the applications are being scored by the independent experts. The word independent might be different in various, well, let's say work cultures. I'm not going to develop this subject, but it might be unfortunately quite subjective. So, because it's whenever the human factor is being involved, it's actually very hard to calibrate the expert scoring system, opinions, and judgment to what the donor wants to see. So, for that reason, the donors in the rules and regulations develop the scoring forms, the scoring form, or I don't know, Megan, maybe you could help me out. There is like a special template usually, uh, consists of very different issues which are of significant importance for the donor, for their know-how, but also for achieving their goals. And these questions, these issues are also um, being scored with a number of points, right? So let's say that there is an issue of outreach to the target group, and the whole application can get 100 points, but this specific issue, it can be scored up to 10 points, let's say maximum. So what I'm saying that the scoring criteria is very important for the design of your application because it gives you a very serious tip of what is the focus of the donor, what do you have to concentrate. Because very often also, sometimes, well, very often the scoring criteria gives you more knowledge than the rules and regulations itself. right? So what I would like to suggest you is to read it through thoroughly and then see whether your application is actually providing the answer, the proper answer to all of these issues and questions which have been drafted in the scoring form for the expert. As far as I know, since I have worked as the fund operator, like my organization worked as the fund operator. So we did try, we did try very hard to discuss with the experts what are our needs hierarchy, what are our preferences, what is the special focus they have to pay their attention to. But sometimes, of course, it's a little difficult since all of us are human beings and we have our filters anyway. But the scoring criteria, as I said, they are very important and it gives you a very good knowledge of what is expected from you in the application form. So many applications also fail not because the project itself is weak, but the applicants misread the call. So I would like to encourage you to read thoroughly both rules and regulations and the application form itself. It usually also contains some tips when it comes to the specific questions which are being asked. So they say like, please think about this or refer to this or please include the analysis, the statistics, the reports, maybe some best practices. So there are some tips which would structure your answer to the specific questions. So usually in a call, what are the specific areas of, let's say, focus or concern in this case? In the case of our community or a problem we are now describing, what you have to pay attention to is the target group. So does the call fund activities for a third country national and or host communities? Remember, we are still in this mid-sized European city who is struggling with the bad reception of the locals, and then they're facing the incidents of hate speech and violence on the street, and public authority is not that much involved. So the target group, geographic scope. Is a mid-sized European city within the funded territory? You will have like plentiful of different calls for proposals and different size of grants. You just have to make sure that this specific city is among those which might be funded. Then the next question and then the next keyword, own contribution. What is the own contribution? I think you are already sleeping because I'm talking too long. So get up, wake up. It's a beautiful afternoon. Sun is shining. Please tell me what is the own contribution when it comes to, yes, finances. So I'm repeating the question, what is the own contribution? Nobody knows. Okay, I think quite a lot of you know, but well, for some reasons you don't want to write it on chat. It's fine. So, own contribution is usually the amount of money or the amount of resources which is needed to complete the project budget. Usually, or very often, if you budget the project, let's say for 100,000 euro and it's a 100% budget, then your donor asks you to provide missing 20%, and this 20% is the own contribution. So you have to secure this money or these resources because sometimes it doesn't have to be the money like, the physical money, the cash. It could be like work of your employees delegated to work for the project. Sometimes it could be some maintenance cost, upkeeping cost, etc. But still, usually you have to provide it. And then again, what we are checking in the partnership, does the call require or reward multi-stakeholder partnership? There are actually some calls for proposals, again, at the European level, which really recognize and award a lot of different countries because, as I said, the European added value, when it's in questions, the multinational stakeholder partnerships will be better awarded. They will get the higher score. What do you have to check in the call again are also the activity types. Are the cultural activities and or events are eligible? So if there are no restrictions, they say in the regulations there are no restrictions, but if there are restrictions, there are usually some list of the eligible activities or there are lists of exclusions. So in some cases, you cannot, for instance, organize some competitions because for some reasons the donors don't want you to organize the competitions. Anyway, it's written. Yeah. So again, the common rule during the application thinking and writing is that all the priorities of a call should be literally reflected in your application. You can actually exercise some paraphrases in English or in your own language, depends on in which language you're drafting the application. But you have to, what I'm doing, like personally, I'm picking the keywords from the application, I'm writing them down, and I'm trying to paraphrase them or put them into my project draft in some different words so that I could see that it really suits the whole idea. And actually, I think it pays off. It usually works. Yeah. So to wrap it up, we choose the call because, in this specific situation, it targets social cohesion and TC and integration, so we have the strategic objectives in common. Yes, we agreed that we shared the strategic objectives. It welcomes multi-sector partnership, since we knew that in our case there is library, NGO, and local authority coming together implementing the project. Its reporting requirements are manageable for a library-led coalition. This is something very technical, but there are still some grant programs which are very difficult in applying, but also in reporting and implementation. They need a lot of human resources, very competent people who have a very specific expertise how to deal with it. I think the situation is actually getting better, and grant like call for proposals are getting easier and they are more user friendly. I remember like 20 years ago they are really awful, and now it's actually slightly better, but usually you have to also think about it, what kind of expertise the call for proposals requires from you to secure, because it's good to to get the funding because the project is great and the application was not that complicated, but then the serious work begins, and then you're in troubles because either you have to hire some extra people or you have to struggle and learn it on your own. Well, you just have to think about it. Okay, so what I would like to tell you more, I would like to ask you the next questions, and hopefully, you will be eager to share the answer. What are actually the calls for proposals, grant competitions you've been participating in so far? Please just write down the names of calls.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Ye-
Is
Yes,
is
absolutely.
is this about what they have already responded to or want to, perhaps potentially as well?
I think yes, absolutely.
Either
Yes,
way.
Silva says culture moves Europe. Maybe somebody else. Megan, Have you participated in some call for proposals yourself?
Yeah, I have, but they've been much smaller. So in the United States, when I was a school librarian, I applied to a lot of private corporations for grants to support my
Mhm.
library. So, for example, there's a company called the Dollar General. It's a store. Target is another store corporation. And the
Mhm.
Getty Museum in Los Angeles actually gives a lot of money to schools if you apply for grants.
Mhm. And do you think they follow the same rules as I described them just a minute ago?
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And specifically, I did one and yeah, it had a very like detailed rubric, eligibility report that I had to very much hone into so that I would make sure that I got all the points that I possibly could.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. So, thank you for your answers. Um, this is gonna be a short overview of how to enter the grants market before we jump into the um, specific requirements of the application form itself and how to get it structured. So the market of grants, these are funds distributed on the local, national, regional, national, and EU level. There are also some transnational corporation funds. And of course, you could consider various types of partnerships to match, to fit into their priorities and join the partnerships. So, EU grants for your activities might be coming from the SERV program, Erasmus Plus, Creative Europe, Asylum Migration and Integration Fund. This is actually the fund which is financing our today's meeting. Horizon Europe. There are also European Economy Area grants. Everything you can actually find on the websites. It's not very difficult to find the international calls for proposals. And of course, you know better than me, probably absolutely 100% what is available on your local or regional or national grant market. Yes, there are also transnational corporation funds and independent foundations. I could only name a few. They are available depend on the geographical area you're coming. For instance, Willem Fonden is for France, Italy every second year, and every second year in Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia and Hungary, I think. So these are only 6 countries. They are financing activities for some reasons, but the fund itself is located in Denmark. There are also Google grants and the institutions which are financed by the Google grants. I just got the invitation to some next call for proposal sponsored by the institution financed by Google. And there is also a Charles Mott Foundation, King Baudouin Foundation. Well, you can do your research and find something suitable for you. It might be quite exciting, actually. But the first thing you've got to enter the grant market with is the expertise. And I'm hoping your expertise will be a bit higher after today's webinar. And you need to know what are the legal and financial obligations. And then the financial capacity. Financial capacity is the ability to provide the own contribution for the project, but also secure the preparatory period because you've got to remember that it takes time. So now we are talking about some prerequisite conditions to prepare a good application. So, of course, we might be willing to develop a great project proposals and we have had a full of our ideas, but still it needs time, it needs resources. Maybe somebody needs to get paid for, of course, somebody has to get paid for preparation of the application, etc. So the financial capacity is a relevant feature as well. Um, the two last features, which is image visibility recognition, outreach, and impact, they actually refer to what is your institution for now, to what extent is recognizable, to what extent matches the criteria described in the regulations, rules and regulations, and to what extent actually the donor will trust you you will spend its money the way you promise. And I would like to encourage you to think about it this way because we are, of course, protesting, and I'm usually very irritated if I'm, doing a lot of reports, financing, and proving that I'm not like zebra or an elephant and describing what I have done. Of course, me personally, me as an individual gets irritated. However, me as the team member of the fund operator, thought about it in a very different way. I saw a lot of potential in organizations which have been funded by the calls for proposal, by the grant program we implemented. But I saw a lot of risks, and this features you see, plus the reports and audits, these are the ways to mitigate the risks. So, to wrap it up, I would like to encourage you to map your goals to the funder's priorities. You must solve their problem or fulfill their plans, ambitions to get funded. Never chase the money that causes a drift from your already established goals and priorities. This is something super serious and unfortunately very often happens. That we desperately wanted to make a project, and again, our brilliant, innovative ideas, we want them we want to make them happen. But still, the our organization mission and our hitherto experiences and our know-how, it's far different from what we would like to do. And then the experts evaluating the proposal will see this drift, will see there is a major discrepancy. There is a major gap between what the organization have done so far and what organization is actually trying to do now. So don't do this. Okay, so this is the next question for you. After my still quite a long speech, I would like to ask you, what are your personal opinions about the risks related to the application or using the money from the grant programs? How do you see it? Maybe you have come across already some risks which were pretty serious, and how are you mitigating them?
In my experience, one thing I noticed there was that if I received a grant and I wasn't able to use all of the funds, that was looked very poorly upon.
Mm-hmm. Have you, maybe I'll reformulate my question. Have you ever come across the situation when you get the funding and then you realize that you actually cannot finance this financial part? Because this happens very often because usually think that, okay, let's go for it. We are being spontaneous. We are going to make it happen. It's going to be great. And then there's like, 100,000 euro gap. And what's going to happen? Federico says main risk is not to reach goals defined in project. Absolutely. This is the main risk. This is absolutely without any questions. This is a main risk because that could ruin both our reputation, our finances, and our organization. That's it. Yeah, but also on my list of risks we've got to take into account are the administrative capacity risk, that documentation, financial reporting, monitoring, and yes, Silva says meet deadlines, taking into account the unpredictable circumstances that always arise. Yes. Unfortunately, there are a lot of various cases we haven't predicted. Of course, there are force majeure, and well, I'm not going to talk about them, but I also faced a lot of situations where the eruption of volcano was combined with the Polish president plane crash, and I was sending the like 20 students, musicians with the instruments to Norway. Well, there were a lot of unpredictable circumstances I didn't take into account. And I paid, of course, for that. I mean, fortunately, only with my own time, not with my own money, because the situation was somehow reversed. So we just make it happen, but it took a lot of nerves and it took a lot of efforts to reshape the events which have been planned long before it happened. These are the risks, of course. And yes, so what I'm saying is that consortium resources is a way to mitigate risks, because we already said that we do have various resources. We do have various approaches towards projects. I don't know whether you remember, there was a slide about the different potential, different capacity of each partner we are now describing, which is library and NGO and local authority. So these are partners coming from two sectors, public and social, right? And they have very different obligations towards their target groups. So it's good to build a consortium with partners whose competences complementing each other, because then the range of your competences, what you have at your disposal, is far wider than if you do something yourself. So every partner bring unique skill, resource, network access, and then you could cover various technical, administrative, and dissemination roles using various competences of employees and institutional competences of your partners. Okay, so we are now going to the last part of our presentation, which are some tips and hints concerning the project itself. Because so far we were discussing the application approaches, what is of utmost importance to draft a successful application, and how to properly choose the call for proposals. So you've got to remember that the project is a very unique construct. It has to have a specific focus. It has a time frame, so the start and end, which actually overlaps with the eligibility period. So the start and end is also start and end of financing. It has to have the defined, specific, limited to the activities and deliverable scope. It needs to be concentrated on specific goal to achieve. Remember, we said there is a problem, there is a goal, there is a change, right? So still we are changing the reality, focusing on the problem. It has to produce a tangible products and quality outcomes. And then speaking about some operational approaches, it needs to be planned carefully upfront. And for that reason, it requires careful management of resources, which is budget, time, and people. We need to identify and mitigate the potential risks and uncertainties, and all the activities must be a subject of an ongoing monitoring and evaluation of quality. So remember also that the grant application is not a project. It is a description of the elements in a certain order, presenting its value and usability. So why I'm saying that? Because very often we say that I write a project. No, I write an application form. I design a project. Project is a little different, but of course it has the elements which overlap. So, anatomy of grant application. I'm just going to briefly present you the most common elements of the application form. Of course, it could be different since each single donor has its own priorities, right? And they may rephrase the question. They may put focus on something else. But usually I would say like 80% is just the same. There might be some, let's say, irregularities. But I think once you know this approach, you'll be more it will be more easier for you to answer these questions, even though they might be asked in a slightly modified way. So usually it starts with a problem statement, which has to be evidence-based, locally grounded, but also linked to funder priorities. And then the objectives, the major part: specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound, smart objectives. And then how are we going to check whether we meet the objectives? We have to also draft results and KPIs, so key performance indicators. So how are we going to check whether we meet the objectives? How are we going to check whether we actually achieve the results? These are the KPIs. I know they, for some people, they sounds terrible, but well, if you cannot avoid something, you've got to fall in love with it. So that's the way how I kind of started to love the logic matrix of the project. Again, the activities and methodology, which needs to be put in the logical sequence linked to the objectives. And guys, the next question to you: how how do you design the project activities? What comes first, results or activities? Shall I put it on chat? Maybe.
So your question is which comes first in the
Yes,
thinking process? Do the
yes.
results, do you think about the results first,
Results comes first,
or do you think about
activities.
the activities first, is the
Hmm.
question.
Yes, this is the question. Desired result, says Silva. Yes, and actually it's a truth, and it's the desirable approach, I'd say. Because as we said before, uh, if we start our project thinking, our design thinking from the problem, then we define our goal, and then we see what are the results which may bring us closer to achieving our main project goal, right? So we know what we would like to change, and then we could think about what type of activities which bring us closer to these results. So I know that there are very different approaches, and the approach might be like a little fluctuated, but what I would say, it's just much better if if you switch to this type of thinking, because yes, outcomes, yes, results, outcomes, absolutely. Um, they are the most preferable, and this is the most preferable, I'm sorry, approach, because you know what you are going to achieve. You know that you actually defined that 100 newcomers in your local community will have the better access to the public services, or they will feel welcome, or they will get to know the other 100 from the local community inhabitants, um, local natives, right? This is your goal. You want them to change their life. You want to um, make the change happen. And then you see how you are going to change their life. And that's why it's the approach which work better. But this is my also private recommendation. Of course, it's coming from the methodology of various project designs. Yes, but once we are done with the activities, then it's good to think about budget and timetable. My recommendation is to think about it in a combo. Uh, and for that reason, somebody smart um, develop something which is called the iron heart triangle of project management. So if we are thinking about activities, we are putting them on time and then we see how much they are gonna cost. So these two are interconnected, and it's good to plan them basically at the same time jointly. Yeah, so in the grant application, you may also find some questions concerning the target group analysis and communication channels. These two are also very much interconnected because if you can prove you know really a deep understanding of what is your target group, how they behave, how they act, where you could meet them, then you know what are your communication channels. And starting from it, you know what could be your impact, so to what extent your project may affect your target groups, and what are your long-term perspectives and ambitions. Yeah. So I think I'm going to skip a couple of slides because we don't have much time. But if you're interested, I can just send you the full presentation. These are also some tips concerning the specific parts of application. So if you are interested, if you find it relevant for your work, you may use it. But coming back to our application and the process of planning. So my also recommendation and how I do it, and actually I think I've said most of it before, we are starting from diagnosing our problem. Then we are trying to see what are other institutions which are active in the field, which might feel some interest or may have some impact on our activities on our project. So we are defining the stakeholders and business environment. And then once we already chew over the problem and we map our stakeholders, we can see the target group in relation with the problem, in relation with the main stakeholders, in relation with the whole neighborhood and the whole landscape. And then once we have it done, we may try to set strategic approaches and tactics. So how are we going to act? How are we going to plan our intervention? Then, in relation to our defined problem, we could define long-term objectives, some smaller operational goals, and expected desirable results. And then, this is the core of the project, long-term objectives, goals, and results. And only then we shall plan the activities and tasks. Activities are major events in the project. We are doing them, and tasks are our, let's say, daily tasks. I'm sorry. Tasks are performed on a daily basis. So these are something we are performing every day, and a number of tasks are actually getting us closer to organized big events. And then having it done, we could try to elaborate, develop some financial and time management, which is usually a budget and timetable. There are a lot of various tools facilitating the budget and timetable, like the project management. So I can encourage you to try the approaches which are the best for you, which seems the most convenient for you. Yes, so I'm gonna skip that part, but and I'll be just showing you the parts which might be the most relevant for you. So again, funders are buying outcomes, not activities. So always trace the line from each activity to a measurable change in the world. This is the project logic. Again, my recommendation, if you are drafting the project application, just please check whether the level 1 contributes to the level 2, and then the level 2 contributes to the level 3. So we are performing a number of tasks which are leading us to organize the activities, events. And then when we are organizing the activities or events, for instance, we are organizing numerous workshops, and then the products, which for instance is this webinar, is getting us closer to achieve the results, which is better understanding of what is the application for grants in the community of librarians. This is our quality result. Then with these results is making possible to achieve the objective, which is, for instance, higher competences of the librarians in the world, which is actually an impact of our project, like very much in short. So this diagram or this picture is actually the attempt to also check whether your project logic is the proper one and all the elements are logically interconnected. Yeah, so I will now come to the last part of our presentation. I'll just stop by for money. Money is always important. And then the few tips how to prepare a good budget is, of course, work on it in relation with the project timeline and work plan. When you ask to determine the prices, use the market research to determine the costs and make it quite average. Then you will avoid the accusation of going too far. You've got to remember that in some grant applications, there is a difference between administrative costs and merit-based costs, and the administrative costs might be limited to 5, 10, 20%. So just watch out for this and allocate a small percentage of the total budget for unforeseen expenses. And I know it's usually not possible, but having some kind of backup, like in 5% on top of your cost estimation might give you some extra money to then negotiate with a donor if something unexpected happen. And then there are some basic key elements, features of the good project proposal. So you've got to prove your organizational strength. The problem should be specific and evidence-based, addressing the target gaps. The execution plan should be well defined with clear milestones and deliverables. The result should be described by clear quantifiable metrics, and you have to also provide a detailed justified budget. Yeah, so in terms of last parts of the application, you are sometimes asked to provide some explanation how the project's results will survive after the grant money runs out. And it's usually being done in the part of project called sustainability and impact. So you've got to really think it through how the project could last. So what are the products, for instance, you'll be using once the financing period is done? And these parts are very often vague, so I really like to, I'd really like to encourage you to think about something substantial, but also thinking about sustainability may inspire you to reformulate your products, because if your products and activities are only valid for the time being, that means they are not actually sustainable. So try to apply this reverse thinking. So if there is nothing sustainable in your project, that means that there is something wrong with the project ideas itself. So again, the tip is please think about your products and activities the way they have to be sustainable. Yeah, and scalability is also a very important feature. So again, show how this specific project activities could be scaled up to the broader organizational strategy later. We are sometimes asked to demonstrate how the project is innovative and how it breaks the existing status quo or offer a new effective approach compared to existing solutions. So this is again a feature we have to come across and think over what is actually something you are bringing to the people. Yeah, and the last slide, frequently made mistakes. I would like to sum it up. I would like to sum up my previous thoughts and ideas. I think very often project writers assume that the project qualifies to the call for proposal without checking every criterion line by line. We had also the tendency to make the promises we cannot fulfill. So we are setting the targets way too much or way too positive. We cannot actually realistically match. The budget justification, I just spoke about the budget. So the calculations have to be properly formulated and proving that we really know what we are talking about. We really know what are the prices in the market. There are a lot of plenty of inconsistencies between activities and results and the goals and the objectives. So again, the diagram I showed you might be quite helpful. I mean, it helps me. Of course, I'm a different person, but maybe it's going to help you as well. So there are missing documents. These are the formal mistakes. So please pay attention what is needed by the donor, what kind of attachments like CVs or budget in XLS or like statutory documents proving the legal status of your organizations. What are the requests for providing those? And then again, concentrate on the scoring system and scoring form from experts and see what type of answers they are seeking for, what are their priorities. What is very helpful in doing that is ask your friend to analyze the expert scoring system and to perform as an expert. It's very good to ask the friend who is not a part of the application writing or the project development. So it's good if you have the friend, if you have the expert who has not been involved so far, but they could read the whole proposal and they could score it against the provided scoring system, and then you see what is the result. Actually, now the friend could be our AI assistant providing some extra tips for you. I think it might be recommended as well. Okay, so I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Magda. That was incredible. We got so much out of that. I hope people feel inspired and also empowered.
Overwhelmed.
No, hopefully not overwhelmed, but hopefully ready to take on this task and to apply for something that they were maybe didn't feel ready for before. So, thank you so much for your presentation. If anyone has any questions, we only have about 2 minutes, but you're welcome to pose them in the chat or to write us. We'll be including our emails. Magda, if you want to add yours in the chat, I'll go ahead and add mine as well, so that if you have any questions, reach out to us. Remember, I've just added some links. So I've added the evaluation form. We really greatly appreciate it if you complete the evaluation so that we have feedback. Do remember, though, that it is anonymous, so I am not able to respond to any questions that are asked in the evaluation form. Additionally, I've added the link to the toolkit download, which is the LiBri project's toolkits, which are designed to assist librarians in welcoming people in a migration situation into the library setting. There's activities, there's methodology, there's research, there's additional resources within the toolkits. If you have not downloaded them, I really encourage you to do so and to use them as a tool. I've also shared the LinkedIn Community of Practice page. So if you're not a member of our community of practice, this is where you can connect with other librarians. This is where you can see news about our upcoming events, where we post our recorded webinars. And I've also included a registration link for an Elon webinar by EBLIDA that I'm going to be facilitating this Thursday. And Magda talked a lot in this presentation about kind of supporting the EU and some of its ideals, and democracy is certainly one of them. So we're going to be talking about how can librarians and librarians support democracy through their work. It's again Thursday, 10 to 11:30. I hope to see you there. And thank you to everyone for participating today. We are at the end of our hour and a half, so thank you for making it till the end. You're amazing. And we hope to see you in our next webinar. Thank you again, Magda. Any questions before we go? Otherwise, stay in touch. All right. Thank you all for being here. Have a great day, and I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Oh, last comment, I will be sending up a follow-up with the video recording and additional tools and resources from the last webinars in this series. Bye.